This is Samsak, and this video we are looking at new personalities in the Cold War, and that is Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, and Pope John Paul II. So first of all, we will look at Ronald Reagan, as Ronald Reagan was the 40th President of the United States, and he served 2 terms between 1981 and 1989. In his 20s, he had been a Hollywood actor, and then he became the Republican Governor of California between 1967 and 1975. In his 2 terms, he cut spending on domestic social programs, and he increased the military expenditure. But under Reagan, the era of détente was brought to an end, and a time of tension and suspicion was introduced. The public also began to fear the possibility of nuclear war because the arms race accelerated within these years. Reagan's presidency was extremely different to the Democrat Jimmy Carter's, as Reagan described Soviet communism as totalitarian darkness, the focus of evil in the modern world, and an evil empire. And this was based upon their subjugation of Eastern Europe and their inability to hold free elections. Reagan was also convinced that détente had allowed the USSR to pursue their own aims, and that the USA trust in the USSR had been misplaced. So whilst Reagan was not willing to enter into war over the matter, he was willing to use aggressive policies in order to change the Soviet behaviour. So Reagan blamed the previous administrations for allowing the US to be taken advantage of, which had undermined their global power. So this meant that Reagan wanted to restore the USA's military strength and revitalise pride in the country. He also feared that communism was expansionist and would spread unless the USA were able to contain it, so this effectively ended détente and initiated a reversion to the policies of containment and confrontation. So the next figure to look at is Margaret Thatcher. And when Margaret Thatcher came to power in 1979, her main agenda was the British economy rather than foreign affairs. However, once Thatcher visited Reagan in 1981, a honeymoon period between the 2 countries started, and this reinvigorated the special relationship to levels not seen since Kennedy and Harold Macmillan 20 years earlier. But Thatcher believed that Reagan had put freedom on the offensive, and this meant that she was a willing ally in support of US aggression. So this included supporting the deployment of American cruise and Pershing missiles on UK soil, and that was despite the protest at Greenham Common, and she allowed the Royal Air Force bases to be used for US airstrikes against Libya in April 1986. And Thatcher's reward for her continued support was being able to extradite for trial suspected IRA terrorists who were taking refuge in America. However, the relationship between the 2 countries wasn't always harmonious. So for example, Thatcher was less willing to completely back Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative project, and Thatcher was also furious when the US invaded Grenada, and Grenada was a member of the Commonwealth and former British colony. And they did this in October 1983. So the final one to look at is Pope John Paul II, and in October 1978, Rome announced their new pope, and this was Karol Wojtyla. Now, he was the first ever Slavic pope, and he was enthroned as Pope John Paul II. But Pope John Paul II focused his first encyclical, which is a letter sent out to all Roman Catholic churches, on the dignity of man and the protection of human rights. And then he visited Poland, which was a deeply Catholic country, in June 1979. And this was not just a religious event, as it had a significant political undertone. So Brezhnev had told the Polish leader Edward Gierek to give Pope John Paul II no reception, yet Gierek protested that he couldn't turn away the first Polish pope. So this meant that the Pope preached more than 30 sermons in 9 days to an estimated 12 million Poles. And these sermons focused upon international reconciliation, whilst he also urged the Polish population not to be afraid. Within these sermons, he tacitly called upon the population to take action when he said that the future of Poland would rest on a number of people mature enough to become non-conformists. The Pope also spoke of a need to open borders and reunite Europe, and this meant that he had managed to speak freely in an aggressive and controlling state. So those are 3 new personalities in the Cold War which happened during the end of the 1970s and the 1980s. Thank you for watching and see you soon. Bye.